The following presentation is brought to you by the Realm Network.
This is Vince Russo's The Brand.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. I am throwing out some bonus material here. I've been wanting to talk to my friend Taeler for some time. So I'm going to let you all sit in on this conversation. Taeler Hendrix, what is going on?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me today and your patience over my smoothie explosion debacle.
Well, I'm glad you're all cleaned up because I don't know how I would have taken to a green Taeler Hendrix today.
Well, oh my gosh, it'd be like the Wicked Witch of the West up in here.
You want to know something, Taeler? Let's start there because I have to say this. Now, Taeler, you got to understand, let's put this aside. I'm old enough to not only be your father, I'm old enough to be your grandfather. So this isn't any flirtation or anything like that in any way. But I comment a lot. Taeler, you take the greatest self pictures out of anybody, I think, on the internet. Every time you post a picture of yourself, I mean, you look Hollywood, you look star, you look stunning. How do you now? Are you still working out of the tiny house?
Yes. I love tiny house living. You know, when I was at Ring of Honor, I used to talk about living in a tiny house all the time, and then fast forward and I did it. So I don't know. To me, it's just like a really fun thing.
Well, we're going to talk about that in a minute, but I have to ask you, Taeler, the older I get, the more hideous I look. What is your secret with the photographs of you? You have to feel. I want to look like a male version of you. What do I need to do? What do I have to do?
Well, you don't see the 5,000 other photos that are just not good. Where I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe that critic in 2007 was right, and I do have a horse face. Or,
Please.
I remember somebody said I look like the Joker when I wear red lipstick and I smile. And so for years I didn't wear red lipstick, and I was like, ooh.
God,
and then I remember somebody was like, oh, you have a bad gum to tooth ratio.
Oh my God.
And I don't know, just all these other crazy things. Like somebody was like, oh, what kind of road food is she eating? And like all these other crazy things. So for me, I think the secret to taking a good photo is knowing what angles are good for you, because everybody's face shape is different, your smile is different and stuff. And then also kind of just being free with your authenticity. When you're actually happy in a photo, I think it shows.
Good point. Yep.
Which is something I had to learn the hard way. And also knowing like what looks good on you, because I look back in wrestling and I think, oh, honey, why didn't anybody tell you? Because, I grew up in wrestling, so I didn't know about colors and makeup and hair. I knew about none of that. I was a very big tomboy, and we weren't allowed to wear makeup growing up.
Well, you know what, Taeler, that's very interesting, because obviously I've worked with hundreds of ladies in the industry. That's very interesting, because basically with a male wrestler, it's the same look. But women wrestlers are forever changing their look between wardrobe and makeup and hair, like from match to match. So I can imagine, like, with all the makeup changes and the hairstyles and the wardrobe, you're probably looking at 100 different versions of yourself.
Yes, it is. It's intense, especially when you're a person like me who's like, I don't know what to do with my hands. And then you compare yourself. Like when I was in TNA, I thought I was like this little girl in a roster full of these stunningly, amazingly beautiful women. And they all had this amazing makeup and amazing wardrobe. They were confident in their skin. And I was just like, coming in like, hi guys, my name is Taeler Hendrix. And then, fast forward and I'm like, oh, I think I'm finally at that point where I feel confident and comfortable in my own skin. And, I'm not necessarily worried about one bad comment if when there's 100 awesome ones. And it's like, I finally get it now. It just took me my entire career to understand it, but I got it.
Yeah,
It would have been so much easier in wrestling if I got it younger.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I tell everybody all the time, like as I go through decade and decade and decade, you learn so much and you become so much wiser. To me, it's if you don't learn from those things, and as you get older, you keep repeating them. But when you can start learning from your past, man, it really, as you get older, it just really rounds you out as a person and it makes you feel really good about yourself.
It does, because then you can look back on those cringeworthy moments and then you can laugh about it and you can laugh at yourself. I feel like if you're not laughing at yourself, then like
Right.
what are you doing with life? Because laughter shows growth. And if you're not busy growing, then you're busy dying. And I'm busy growing.
And Taylor, that's what I am not going to talk to you about wrestling at all. You got so many other things in your life I want to know about. I don't like talking about wrestling, but I do like talking about the psychological aspects of our business. And you just said one thing that I scratch my head over this on a daily basis. Why do so many people in the business and fans of the business, Taylor, why do they take everything so seriously?
I think it comes down to the cult-like mentality of toxicity that is the nature of the beast of pro wrestling. And I wish someone would have broken that down and explained that to me when I was 17 years old. I got into wrestling when I was freshly turned 17, hadn't graduated high school yet, hadn't gone to prom yet, didn't have my own car yet. I was a baby. I hadn't even heard certain swear words yet. And I went to public school. So that's telling you something. Like I was just this awkward little gothy hippie girl that was like an athlete, So I think that from what you're asking about the psychological aspect of wrestling, I think the internet wrestling community has gotten really comfortable with being keyboard heroes. There's a lot of people that play tough guys, but if you confronted them in real life, they are very cowardly. And so you can tell it's just a gimmick, but their egos are too fragile to admit that and to grow from that. I think in order to eliminate a lot of the hate in wrestling and a lot of the seriousness, I think people need to take a step back and realize what the pro wrestling industry is, because it can be an amazing place. It has the potential to be such a crazy, awesome, once in a lifetime place. And it's an industry geared towards kids at this point because a lot of it is PG. But I feel like if we allow the toxicity to continue, which I think is what you're hinting at, with everybody being so serious and people hating on other fans because they are a fan of this company versus that one, it's like, it's just different flavors of ice cream, guys. I'm not going to hate you if you like mint chocolate chip. I personally hate mint chocolate chip. I'm a vanilla with Jimmy's girl. I'm from Boston, So I think that's what makes the psychological aspect of wrestling very toxic. Whereas my fan base is so like fun and interactive and positive. I think if we can spread out into the rest of the internet wrestling community, that would be so amazing. And if people took themselves a little less seriously, like if you mess up in a match, it happens. Grow your brand so that way you can get paid more money because you bring in viewers like these influencers will. If you're not having the same power as an A-list actor or an influencer, then ask yourself, what are you doing? Don't get mad at companies for bringing those people in to bring eyeballs to a product that you're on. Take a step back, be brutally honest with yourself, and then go work on what you need to work on so you can give yourself the best chance of success. That would, I think, in my personal experiences, I think that would change the negative aspects of the entire business, because not only are the people in the business going to benefit from it, the fans that are paying their hard-earned money for the product are going to benefit from it. So we all join in on the benefits of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Some great comments. Yes. Now, I think if I was a woman, I think I'd be Taeler Hendrix.
Aw, that's probably like the best compliment ever.
We have a lot in common, and I'm going to tell you what those. Aside from looks, I'm hideous. You look like a movie star from the 40s. Okay.
Oh my gosh, that made my day.
Aside from that, now I was so excited for you because I, like you, I am a Little House mark. I watch the shows. Listen, I'm married. I would never get my wife to go for that. Believe me, I've tried. If I was a single dude, no doubt in my mind, I would be living in this Little House. We talked about it last time. You're still living in the Little House. My question to you really is like, this is the one thing that I don't understand because I've never owned one. How much do you actually move the house around? And when do you decide it's time to move the house to another place?
I don't move around as much anymore. I think that there's this stigma about tiny houses and full-time RV living that people don't talk about. And it's kind of scary. You know, if you break down, that's your whole house that's now broken down. If you have animals,
I never thought of that, right?
yeah, you and your animals can't, spend the night at the mechanic, like, oh, hey, just sleep in my house.
So the house is like sitting at the side of the road.
Pretty much. So I don't move around as much anymore because that is scary. You know, your whole house, your whole livelihood is in your house. And I rescue animals and work with animals. So that's just not something I personally feel comfortable with. But, there's other people. You can go on YouTube University and watch all these shows where people move around all the time. That's great. But for everyone, it's not realistic. However, I will say this, RVs a lot of the times end up costing less than tiny houses on wheels. So it's a give and take, but a lot of RVs now are coming with better amenities than apartments and fixer-upper houses. And you get like such a better deal, and you get the freedom of a better opportunity financially. So I think it just depends on who you are. But yeah, it's unrealistic.
Are you thinking of making the switch?
I have a combination, so I have a double. So I think the only way I would be switching is if I was upgrading, because people raise families in houses. Justin Bieber has a touring big giant RV house. I think Kevin Hart does. Quite a few NFL players and a couple Pro Bowlers. So like this is, I don't know, it's a really cool wave of the future. And I think it's also more economically efficient as well as financially responsible.
So now, is your Little House, is it in a Little House community, or is it just on a separate piece of land someplace?
Separate piece of land someplace, because due to COVID, all of that stuff really filled up really fast.
Yeah.
It was insane. So yeah, I'm just really comfortable where I'm at, and I think it's really cool to, because I know I mentioned earlier, like at Ring of Honor, I talked all the time about the tiny house movement and tiny houses and how like balls to the wall I was all about it. And now I get to say that I did it, and I've pretty much done everything, or on my way to doing everything that I ever wanted since I was 13 years old. So I think that that's pretty amazing.
Have you done? I will tell you what mine was without a shadow of a doubt, because I was able to accomplish it. What was number one on the bucket list? Have you accomplished that yet?
No, but I actually have it in the works. So my little 8-year-old self will one day be crying because it's in the works right now. So I just can't wait to look back at the little girl that I used to be, who dreamed of it and, believed everyone in it when everybody said I would never be able to do it or achieve it, and subliminally give myself a high five. I just can't wait for that moment. I will cry.
Are you going to share with that? Are you going to share?
I can't right now. I'm not allowed to at this point in time, but as soon as I can, I would definitely love to come back on your show.
Oh,
and
please.
tell you
I gotta
all
know
about
now.
it.
Yeah, now I'm wondering, because here's the second reason why I would be Taeler Hendrix if I was a female. Your knowledge, forget love, your knowledge of 60s music blows me away. We have been up late at night, sometimes going back and forth, and I'll literally sit back in this chair. I'm like, are you kidding? How do you, at your age, how do you know that? But my bucket list, we're going to talk about music in a second, but my tie-in was, do you know what number one on my bucket list was that I was able to achieve? And I did choke up, and it was such a surreal moment. And it definitely has to do with music, without a shadow of a doubt.
Did you get a personal concert?
No, better than any personal concert anybody could ever give me.
A personal shout out.
Better. The top of my bucket list, and if you would have seen this, you would have gone hysterical. I had to walk across Abbey Road.
Oh, shut up.
And I got to tell you, Taylor, if you were there, you would have died, because I walked back and forth like 100 times. First of all, I got to tell you something. It's amazing because it is a very busy intersection. And everybody knows that's the intersection. So you've got people, on both sides of the road just waiting to go back and forth, back and forth. And these cars, you literally have dozens of cars. That it was quite the experience. But man, and what's so cool about it is, there's the intersection. And then when you walk off the street, Abbey Road Studios is right there. And that's how the Beatles recorded the album cover, because they needed a cover for the album, and they were recording it at Abbey Road Studios. And they couldn't come up with it. They couldn't come up with a concept. And then one of them said, let's just take pictures of us walking across the street. So they literally went outside and walked right through the crosswalk. But that to me was the holy grail of music, my teenage years. It was absolutely phenomenal.
I love stories like that because there's so many examples of you don't have to have the best of everything to make the best of anything. And that's just what it is. Sometimes like those split second decisions turn out to be the most iconic. And I think that's so cool.
Yeah. Now you have to fill me in, give me a little bit of a history of your musical knowledge. See, I'm a big fan of that hippie age. I have a music room. Taylor, I got to send you some pictures. It's all psychedelic, fuzzy furniture. You would love it. It's a separate room. I would have to assume this came from your parents, because where else would that start?
It came from my mom. My dad left when I was, very young. I wasn't even walking. And so I grew up for quite a long time with just my mom, and she was such a hard worker, hustler. I remember the first time I had Christmas presents under the tree. My mom is savage. Mom Hendrix is a badass. I will tell you, she's amazing. And she has such an extent. She's pretty much a jukebox all on her own. She just is a well, she'll just hear something and go, oh, that's da-da-da from da-da-da, and da-da-da is the song name. And I'm just like, how do you know that? You don't even like that genre. And she was the youngest of 5 children. And so by the time she came into the picture, half of them were teenagers at that point. And so my mom grew up in the late 60s through the 70s. And then obviously she was having a blast in the 80s. And so I got a lot of that from her. I got a lot of the vintage Godzilla movie from her. I got 60s and 70s music from her, and all of that sort of culture. HR Puffin stuff, that came from her.
Oh,
so
God,
I may have
yes.
been growing up in the 90s, but I very much had a 70s childhood. I think most of my favorite movies came out as a kid. They came out before I was born. So
I'm the same way, man. I listened to this music. I was either, under the age of 5 or wasn't born yet. And I'm always, man, why wasn't I alive during that era? Do you ask yourself that question too? Everything just seems to have been so much better back then.
I totally would have loved the 40s and the 70s. And I love the 90s as well. I could have done without the 80s, but I do love me some good 80s hair bands like Motley Crue, I won't lie. But yeah, the 70s and the 60s were just my jam. The Doors, Led Zeppelin, the Grassroots, the Guess Who, and just so many amazing bands. I'm a huge Mama Cass fan, and
I love
John
Mama.
Denver. I don't know, they were so talented, and there was just such a wealth of knowledge, and that there's just that now sound. They always called it the now sound. I don't
Right,
know
right,
what it is, but
right.
you recognize it when you hear it, and it just takes me to a different place. I listen to so much music that I don't really have one genre. I will listen to Slayer, and then in the same, session, I will have John Denver going, and it's like, what?
Yeah,
But I don't
I'm the
know, I
same
just
way.
love music.
To me, the difference is, man, you just brought up Mama Cass for argument's sake. And the chat, my go-to channel on Sirius is always the 70s channel, because I was born in 61. So in the 70s, I went from 9 to 19. I mean, that's when I listened to the most music. And the one thing is, man, as soon as a song came on, you knew that voice and you knew how that was. Nobody else sounded like Mama Cass. Nobody else
No.
sounded like Cher. Nobody else sounded like Janis Joplin. And I swear to you, when I hear today's music, I know I'm older, but it just all seems to sound the same to me. There aren't those distinctive voices there used to be.
Um, pardon me. I don't know. I'm 50-50. I actually like a lot of different music that's out today that I think when people look at me, they wouldn't expect. Like, I love the band Ghost. Love
You
them.
listen to Ghost. I've got some Ghost. I
And
love
then
that because it's very theatrical and very wrestling. Ghost.
yes, I actually used one of their songs when I tagged with Chelsea Green, and that was like our entrance music. We were trying
Yeah,
something different as
yeah.
Dishonorable Impact. I like that. I love Post Malone, Taylor Swift. Miley Cyrus has just been
Oh,
killing it in her covers. I can't even stand it how amazing they have
I
been.
tell, I tell people this all the time. You could say what you want about Miley with the twerking and the tongue. Her voice is insane. Insane. Yes.
Her and I would be good friends. I can just tell.
Yeah.
There's just certain people where you're like, I like your vibe. You and I
Yeah.
would be great as
Yeah,
friends.
she came out with that new album with the cover songs, which they're killer. They're absolutely. The one song with Joan Jett is unbelievable. I am a big fan. My biggest artist that I'm a fan of today, and because to me, she's the whole package. But I think the one thing that really connects with me is the attitude. I'm a big Rihanna mark. I love Rihanna. You a big fan of Rihanna?
I am. I like her a lot, but I'm an even bigger fan of Lady Gaga.
Yeah, well, her pipes too. Forget about when she sings that song, "The Edge of Glory." I don't know if you ever saw this, Taylor. She sang that song just playing the piano on the Howard Stern show. It
Ooh,
drove
that
me.
sounds
It drove me
good.
to tears. It literally drove me to tears. It was unbelievable. I want to talk about now yeah. What were you going to say? Go ahead.
I was about to say, it cut out before, but I was almost in tears when I heard Miley Cyrus perform Doll Parts by
Yeah.
Hole.
Yes.
I identify with that song so much, and then seeing her perform it for pretty much the first time on Howard Stern, I was choked up. I
Yeah.
really was.
You got to check out that Lady Gaga. Oh
I
my God, I
will.
was bawling. I want to talk about now. Okay, here's another thing we got in common. Taeler Hendrix, the author. Now, here's what I love about that. Your genre is children's books. I've always had this thing about, man, I'd love to write children's books. And I'll tell you why, from my point of view. I think that is the one genre where you can just let your creativity go nuts. You're because that's how kids are. Kids are so creative. Animals talk and hippopotamuses dance, and anything is acceptable in a child's world. I want to hear that journey where where do you get the idea? Where do you get the incentive? And how do you follow through with this? Because now you're celebrating the first year anniversary of It's Not Easy Being a Sloth. Please walk me through the whole process from the beginning to where you are now.
It's very interesting. There's this story my mother told me. My family was not very well off when they were growing up. And like I said earlier, my mother was the youngest of 5 kids, and she loved to read. I mean, she's read the Sumerillion, which I mean, you need a glossary and a notebook to get through the amount of characters in that book. Let me tell you, like she's read so much, and it almost reminds me of the movie Matilda. But my mother had read every book in the house, and she had asked my grandmother if they could go get some more books for her to read or go to the library. Well, they didn't have a library card, and they couldn't afford to go buy some books. So my grandmother, in her wisecracking, crass attitude, was like, well, if you've read everything, why don't you write one yourself? And my mother did.
Oh, wow.
My mother started writing her own book as a teenager, and she actually finished it for me and gave it to me as a gift on my 13th birthday.
Oh, wow. That is awesome. That is great.
And so I always I hated reading when I was super young, couldn't stand it. I remember my mother bought me the Harry Potter books after the first film came out. And I remember I'm 5 chapters into the book and he's still in the bloody closet, where in 5 minutes in the book he's out of the closet. I didn't have the attention span for it.
Right.
Even though I was in reading club in elementary school, I was very like hilariously nerdy. And all of a sudden, there was this one book we were required to read in elementary school, and this sparked my love of reading. And it was like all of a sudden, the curtains opened up, sunshine was coming through the windows, and then all of a sudden, I realized why my mother loved reading books.
Oh,
It was,
wow. What book was it?
Oh, I am about to tell you.
Okay.
I read Lois Lowry's Number the Stars, and it was just the most amazingly written book that I had ever read at that point. She has this amazing ability to take dystopias and really sort of interestingly, not necessarily child-friendly topics, and then turn them into books that children can read. You know, who would have thought somebody would write a book about World War II for children?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what Number the Stars is about. Number the Stars chronicles this Christian family who is best friends with a Jewish family. And it's in the midst of, Nazi occupied Denmark. And the story follows how the Christian family takes the Jewish family's daughter, Ellen, and they try to smuggle Ellen across the border to, I think, Sweden. And they talk on the phone in code where, Jewish people, they refer to them as cigarettes. They could, because of wiretapping, they didn't want to get caught.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they would do, transfers, and they talked about sugar rations and how kids couldn't have real birthday cakes and cupcakes and stuff because they couldn't make frosting or the cakes without the sugar. And they have a coffin and they're pretending to have a funeral, but really it's filled with supplies to get people across the border to neutral Sweden. Like,
Yeah.
who would have thought that that was a kid's book? And it opened this whole new world. And then I started reading more of her books, like Wayside School is Falling Down and all these other books. And it was all of a sudden, I knew that that was something that I would want to do someday. And so I started writing. I wrote all these little random things down, and my mother always hoped that I would be one day.
Before we get to that, please keep that thought. I don't mean to interrupt, but I swear the older I get, if I don't ask you when I'm thinking of it, I'll forget it. Okay? Because I think this is very important for people listening. Because man, have you ever done Goldilocks' show?
No, but I have had her on my show.
Okay, yeah. You two are such driven women that I get tired watching you guys because I'm like, where do they get the energy from? But I used to tell my kids this all the time, and I want to hear in your own words because you can really motivate people. I used to tell my kids all the time, listen there, and I still tell them to this day, there are 2 types of people. There are people that talk about it and people that do it. Okay. Now okay, you love reading. Now you pick it up from your mother, you love reading. There are a lot of people that would be too lazy to take that next step. It would be like, oh, yeah, I could write a book, but they never write the book. Please tell me, how do you find that motivation to go from an idea in your head, not procrastinate, and yeah, I'm going to do this? Because a lot of people don't have that.
I'm a huge procrastinator, and I'll tell you why. I come up with some of my best ideas and some of my best work on the fly at the last minute. I don't know why. I've always been that way. I'm a person that I may be like this when I'm under the wire, but I'm a like what they say in Grey's Anatomy, I'm a good soldier in a storm. I'm very great in a crisis. I'm very calm and collected, and I'm like, okay, clear and concisely, this is what we need to do. This is how we're going to get done. Ready? Great, let's go.
Right.
And I think that that has been very helpful, especially, in the wrestling business, in the writing world. Things are always changing. You have to know how to pivot and adapt and all this other stuff. And I think that that's a necessary skill, especially with the ever changing world that we have now, with the introduction and influx of technology and apps and people's attention spans being so much smaller than what they used to be, say, in the 70s. And we're all guilty of it. So for me, I think it all comes down to, if you want to do something, I don't agree that there's two types of people. I think that there's three types of people. I think there's doers, there's talkers, and then there's the third kind of people, who are the people that don't know if they're a doer or a talker. They haven't quite figured it out yet.
Mhm.
So to me, there's three types of people. I think that each category has their own place. But it's really solely up to you to figure out which one you are. Are you a doer who's going to put your words into actions and they match up? Are you a talker who would rather push your own insecurities onto somebody else? If you can't imagine yourself doing it, then there's no way that that other person can do it, and you want to tear them down. It's like what Gary Vee says, there's two ways to build the tallest buildings. Either you build the tallest building, or you knock all the other ones in town down.
Right.
And then there's a third person who's so indecisive, they haven't figured out and or decided if they are a talker or a doer.
But see, to me, Taylor, is that indecisiveness, is that an excuse? Is that an excuse to kind of buy you more time to maybe talk yourself out of it?
Maybe yes and no. I think some people are just so not self-aware. They haven't looked in the mirror and had that brutally honest conversation with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't written down their goals. They're just drifting day to day, waiting for life to happen when life is happening right in that moment, and they're kind of lost. I think we've all experienced those moments in time. I know I was lost for a couple of years, and then it all came down to, Taylor, you do not recognize yourself in the mirror. Is this who you wanted the little girl that you were, who made way for you to grow up one day? Is this who she's going to be proud of? No. Are you being the adult you needed as a child? No. If you're looking around your environment, do you feel supported? Do you feel uplifted? Do you feel protected? Do you like what you see? The answer is no. Then what are you doing about it? Get up and move, because you're not a tree with roots stuck in the ground. You do not have to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that takes a lot of courage. It also takes a lot of discipline and honesty, and it also calls your ego into check. People with too big of an ego
Mm-hmm.
aren't able to do this, because you do have to have that tough conversation with yourself. And if
Right.
you do, though, that's when you're going to find out if you were a doer or a talker. And the thing is, as a talker can become a doer. They just
Mm-hmm.
have to really want it.
Right.
And for me, I really want it. And it's okay to have a bad day. For anybody who's listening, good mental health is not sunshine, rainbows, and
Right.
unicorn horns coming out your eyeballs every day. That's unrealistic.
Right.
That's like social media talk right there. It
Right.
is unrealistic.
So what was
yeah, just do it.
what was the process then? So you decide, I'm going to do this. What was the process?
Well, I had all of this random material that I'd been writing since I was in elementary school. And I really just needed a good kick in the pants, because, for years I was around people telling me I was too fat, I was too skinny, I smiled too much, I didn't stand up straight enough. I shook hands too stiffly, or I wasn't good enough in the ring, or I was never going to make it here unless I had their help. I'm stupid for having dreams. I'm never going to make it anywhere. All this negative stuff. And eventually, when you hear that you're a POS long enough, you start to believe it. And
Mhm.
that's why who's around your kids is so important, because they're so impressionable. But if you carry that impressionable ness, I guess I'm going to create a word because I don't think that's a word. If you carry around that insecurity into adulthood, people are going to recognize that and take
Mhm.
advantage of it and manipulate
Mhm.
you and use it against you.
Mhm.
That necessity to want to be liked, to fit in and be accepted. I was very much that person.
Right.
So there just came a point in time, like I said, where I didn't recognize myself, and I was like, okay, well, I still have dreams. What am I going to do about it? Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to bet on myself and believe in myself when nobody else will. Decide that I matter. I have these dreams for a reason, and I have to have enough self-love to at least try. If I fail, I know I tried, and failure is a necessary step to success. So
Right.
don't be afraid,
Right.
Taylor. Keep going forward. If you only sell one book your first time, that's more books than all the people that didn't write any
Right.
and didn't
Right.
try. And that sort of self-talk every single day is what allowed me to do that, and to have enough. I say, I think you'll appreciate this. I say all you need is love, guts, and gumption. And this is how I did everything that I've accomplished today that we're going to talk about. All you need is love, guts, and gumption. And that's my own little, philosophy quotations. I think all you need is love, guts, and gumption, Vince. Self-love to realize that you and your dreams matter. Guts to go after those dreams and believe in yourself when no one else will. And then
Mhm.
the gumption to see those dreams through without sacrificing your integrity, and cheering for yourself in the silence, letting your success make your noise. I think that's the best way to round out me as a person
Wow.
and my philosophy and what I want more people to do for themselves. Because I feel like if I can do it, almost anybody can. You just have to really want it bad enough. Do I want it more than you? That's the question.
That's incredible. I mean, that is incredible. So how do you go back? Because I know, like, listen, I was able to write a couple of books, and I say this all the time, Taylor. To me, as a writer and somebody that wanted to be a writer at a very young age, my greatest accomplishments were writing my books. Not any TV show, not any rating. It was writing I wrote 2 books. To me, that was my greatest accomplishment because that was the dream. But I was able to get my books published because I have a name, I mean, and I had a story. Not easy to get children's books published. So you need to kind of walk me through that. How does that happen?
I think the biggest thing was I was always delaying all of my goals, because I always felt, growing up in wrestling, you had to be perfect. You had to look perfect. You had to perform perfect. You had to be perfect. You had to do everything perfect. So it's like delaying happiness and delaying your goals because you're waiting for that unobtainable level of perfection. So for me, the way I just dove head first was coming to the realization that my books don't have to be perfect. My sentence syntax and my grammar doesn't have to be perfect, because the child isn't going to be like, oh, there should be a comma there, or
Right,
there's
right,
comma splice,
right,
or oh, the verb is in the wrong place. The kids aren't
right,
going to care. They're just along for the ride to enjoy your story.
right,
And so that's when I was like, you know what? If I don't have to be perfect, I just have to be the best that I can do and grow from there. That was step one. Step two was actually getting the writing finished. And the bigger step was finding an artist, because I can't draw to save my life. I can draw a fish and some seaweed and a treasure box. Like I can't draw. I
right.
can't. I am not that inclined, and I have no problem admitting it. And then the other thing was just gathering everything I'd ever done and coming up with a clear intent, because I felt, even though I'm a professional wrestler and stuff, I was a teacher too. So I felt like if anybody had a voice to start a platform in that regard, it would be me, because
Right.
I've worked with ages 2.8, so they're only a little bit under 3 years old, all the way through teenagers. I've worked with teenagers that had Asperger's and Down syndrome. I've worked with teenagers that wanted to become leaders someday, and I worked with little kids. I was a preschool teacher and an after-school program and a site coordinator, and I was a camp counselor. and a personal aid. So I've worked with so many different ages and types of children. And so I learned that small minds kill more dreams than the act of them one day going after their dreams.
Mhm.
And so I wanted all of these life lessons to come out in my books. And I felt like I was the perfect person for that, with all of my own trials and tribulations, but also coming from a teaching and kid oriented background. And so children's books to me was the perfect place to start. I'm writing a thriller book. I'm writing a book on wrestling. I'm writing a positive book and a fantasy book. But to me, the meat and potatoes for me to start and build a body of work was definitely children's books. I feel like if we talk to all the life lessons that you and I are talking about, if we instill those in children younger, the world is going to be such a better place someday. And
We
I
need
want to
to
be around to see that.
we need to co-author a children's book where we get that over in their language. But you still, this is why I'm asking you. You still got to get this thing published. That's not easy. How does that happen? I would assume you didn't have connections in the publishing world. You never wrote a book before. This is the big one. You write this book, you believe in it, you get the artist. It's a thing of beauty. You still got to get it published. So how does that happen?
Proof of concept, and just keep going. It doesn't matter how many times you hear the word no. You know, if you think back, J.K. Rowling was rejected from every single major publisher, and now she's one of the most wealthy authors in the world. You know, people like Stephen King just paid for a creative writing elementary school class to publish their own book. You know, the
Wow.
opportunities are out there,
Yeah.
and if you can't find an opportunity, then you can always self-publish.
Right.
And there's instructions on how to do that. I think we're living in an age where YouTube University is so valuable because it's free and everything
Oh,
is on
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But for me, it was definitely proof of concept because I already have my own following. I already have like a brand. You know, when people see a certain look, they go, "Oh, that's Taeler Hendrix." Or if they see a certain tweet, there's so many people that like try to like do my tweets on their own accounts, and people are like,
Right.
"Oh, that's a Taeler Hendrix tweet." You
Right.
know, so I've done a very good job at creating a brand that people can buy in and believe in. You know,
Right.
because I'm being free with my authenticity at this point in my life, and so I think that was a very big help with my proof of concept, because not only did I have a brand and a base that is on me, I built it, I protect it, I cultivate it, I work hard for it. Then I also had a really good proof of concept, and I also was willing to bet on myself. I was like, listen, here's this proof of concept, but guess what? I've already got 2 more on the way. Check me out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Gosh, that's all. You make me want to write a children's book.
Do it.
I might. So what's next? I mean, what's next? The world's yours.
I'm writing my 4th, 5th, and 6th book right now while I'm a podcaster on your brand, as well as working on my YouTube channel. And I'm still a pro wrestler and actress, and I'm pretty much my own boss, living my best life on my terms. And I couldn't be more happy, you know. And I'm also writing about wrestling for Fightful, so I don't know. It's really awesome. I a couple years ago, I never would have thought that this would be possible. And then
Crazy.
fast forward, I celebrating my 1 year anniversary yesterday for being a published author. And in 1 year, I published 3 children's books. I hustled really hard, and I'm working on my 4th and 5th ones, and 2 other books for, you know, 2 other genres and stuff. So I think it's really awesome. But what's really interesting is It's Not Easy Being a Sloth was the newest book that I was working on, that I finished first, ironically enough, and published first. My second book, A Fish with a Wish is Trish, I actually started when I was in the 6th grade.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
It
Yeah.
was a haiku assignment that I originally failed and had to redo. And I memorized the haiku in my head, and I turned it into my second children's
That
book.
is awesome. That is awesome.
And
Now,
then
yeah, what's the third one?
my third one is I'm extremely proud of this one. I see a little bit of myself in each of these books, but the third one really resonates with me. It's called Nosy Rosie and the Secret Surprise, and it's about this elephant who realizes that even though she hates secrets and surprises, but nobody quite knows the reason, she comes to find out that she herself is her biggest secret surprise because she doesn't know what she's good at. She doesn't know like how to, like, she's discovering herself, and she comes to find out that, you know, all these things about herself that she never would have found otherwise, and then she ends up fulfilling a dream that she didn't even know she had. And I actually started writing that when I was in TNA. And then I gave up on it. I remembered it when I went to do my WWE tryout in 2015, then just put it back down. I tried to pick it up at Ring of Honor, but I was just so frustrated and uninspired. And then all of a sudden, it was like, boom, this needs to be a children's book, because if they can learn it faster than I did, and even parents can pick up on the life lessons in it, so it's like really good quality time. I was like, this needs to be a book. And then I finished it, and it became my third book. And I'm incredibly blessed and proud.
Now, where can we get these books?
My first book, It's Not Easy Being a Sloth, which is the 1-year anniversary yesterday, that is available on barnesandnobles.com as well as amazon.com. And then my other 2 books, as well as It's Not Easy Being a Sloth. So you can get It's Not Easy Being a Sloth by Taeler Hendrix, A Fish with a Wish is Trish by Taeler Hendrix, and Nosy Rosie and the Secret Surprise by Taeler Hendrix, all on Amazon. And they have this really cool option that I don't think a lot of people know about, where you can buy it for somebody else. It's called Buy for Others. And so you go through the purchase process when you click on that button, and all you need is the person's email, and it sends my my book voucher to their email, and they click on it and they download my book. So you can buy it for a school, you can buy it for somebody else who has
awesome.
kids, whatever. It's really awesome.
Well, what about everything else, man? Please give us everything else that you're doing, so we know where to follow you, we know where to find you. Give it all to me.
All right. You can always follow me on my social medias. I try to be very active, and I do a lot of really fun stuff on there. And you never know if I may answer the questions I ask all of you fans on my own YouTube. So follow me on Twitter with @Taeler_Hendrix. And then you can follow me on Instagram with @Taeler Hendrix ROH. I'm sorry they're not the same. There were fake me's on the platforms before the real me was, because I'm not cool. You can follow me on YouTube with youtube.com/Taeler Hendrix. And I upload clips of my Talks with Taeler Hendrix podcast on there, which is on russosbrand.com exclusively. And then I also have like a little cooking show that I'm reviving called Taylor's Tiny Kitchen. And I do Q&A Wednesdays every Wednesday, where I answer fan questions. So definitely check that out. And I do Motivation Mondays, and I'm starting a book club. 2 months ago, we had a really awesome book. On June 1st, we'll have a new book. We do it every 2 months, so it's more cost effective. You can also check out my website, taelerhendrix.net. I'm getting ready to revamp that. And as we just said, my books are on amazon.com, where you can buy for others. I believe it's in the US, Canada, the UK, and a couple countries overseas. Yeah, I've got so much going on. So there's a little bit of something for everybody. Podcast, website, YouTube channel, books, and then obviously Fightful.com.
And oh, by the way, I'm rescuing animals. Oh, by the way.
Yes, I am. I love animals so much.
I swear, anybody who is watching this interview, I literally feel like I am going to leave this seat and run out and do something. I'm going to run out and do something by listening to you talk, Taeler. You are amazing. I mean, and listen, I am very, very lucky to have you on Russo's brand. I've always been a huge, huge fan of yours. I always say, you know, because I am a little older and I look at what you've accomplished at your age, and it blows my mind. And you are really an inspiration to somebody like me, you know, let alone everybody that listens to your show and follows you. So, man, I want to thank you for sharing yourself with us, Taeler. You're amazing.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. And you have no idea what a compliment that is to me, because I try to tell people all the time, when I was in wrestling, I always loved to send out my work and different things that I've done to people that had more experience than me to get feedback and to learn. And you were one of those people that actually I sent my stuff to, and you gave me such amazing feedback. I think some of the best feedback I ever got was from you and Bruce Pritchard. Yeah. And so I think that you just have such a wealth of knowledge that I feel very humbled to be able to share that experience with you, and to be able to learn and grow as well, you know, and I think more people need to understand that.
On the other side of that coin, though, it's people like you that keep people like me young. It really is, because it's so refreshing to see what you're accomplishing. And just know that I'll always be one of your biggest fans.
Thank you. Oh, this is such what a great early birthday present. Thank you so much.
When's your birthday?
It's in like 2 weeks, on June 7.
Oh, well, happy early birthday to you, Taeler.
Thank you. Oh my God, it's so awesome.
Yeah. Well, everybody, there you go. And we are lucky enough, man, to have her podcast on Russo's brand. Check that out. So for me and the great Taeler Hendrix, get up right now and go do something. We'll see you next time.